Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about Rohingya and other problems that the world is facing today. Rohingya is not a problem, but they're throwing away from being thrown away from Burma. That is a problem, and that they are a stateless person. So I would like you to send me your comments on. You can see the email address on our screens about this or other topics. See, because sometimes we would like to include your feedback in the next program. Thank you. Yes, Amrit. We were talking about political blackness during the break. Does it have a role in the politics?
Well, I think, one thing that's happening in this country particularly is that people forget their history,
Right.
Even recent history. Nobody remembers and nobody thinks about it. So now, people say, what is political blackness? After all, people, African Caribbeans or Africans, they are so different, their experiences are different from Asians. So what does it mean? It means nothing. But if you look at it historically, then you see, for example, in East London, when the fascists came to attack, in the late 70s, the young boys there who fought them, they identified as black, And the point was that you had this unity between Asians, Africans and African Caribbeans, which carried on for a very long period, in a way right up to the 90s. And that unity was very useful in mobilizing against racism from the communities.
Right.
Now, you see, we have Brexit, people are getting attacked, but that community level action is missing. It's been completely wiped out.
Why?
Well, people don't organize well, partly because, they gave money to the communities to set up offices and community leaders, they became well off, and they lost connection with the ordinary people, And the people who used to mobilize were young men, young women from the community. Ordinary, they were not in some office or holding some position. They came out on the streets,
Right.
And that kind of organizing, without a lot of funds, but with some commitment, completely was destroyed. We don't have that now. People don't, people make speeches and they go on television, they talk, they become so-called leaders, but they have lost touch with the ordinary people.
Is it also because the second and third generation men and women, they are doing very well, so they don't think that racism matters?
Well, I don't know how well they are doing. I think, a minority of them are doing well. Are doing well in school, certainly, and so on. But even when they do well in school, they're still discriminated against. And I think now, they're talking about that level of discrimination. They're no longer interested in actually protecting the community or those who are less well off.
Right.
And there are a lot of them, you just have to look at the places like Bradford, where there are also a lot of Bangladeshis and Kashmiris, Pakistanis. Now people are also divided into separate groups, like Bangladeshis won't organize with Pakistanis or with Kashmiris, let alone with Africans.
Right.
And to me this is a very sad situation, because we certainly were together as black. We called ourselves black, but that doesn't mean we didn't have our separate identities, but we're united.
But don't we find this the same thing among the host community as well? I mean, there are a lot of many families, and surely so many families that, I see programs on television that they're deprived, they don't work, they are on benefit for years, and they're really not well off.
Definitely. I think, the policies of this government has affected everybody. I mean, you may have heard of the film I, Daniel Blake, which is a really amazing, it's a fantastic film about one man, a white man, and his experience of trying to get benefits, I mean, it's difficult to see that film and really not cry, because it's so powerful. So this is happening to people across the board. But the point is, for Asians and Africans, African Caribbeans, there's also the factor of racism. There's also the factor of now increased racial violence. And to combat that racial violence, we really need to have some degree of unity.
I'll come back to that later. I just wanted to ask you something about India and Mr. Modi's demonetization of 1,000 rupees notes and 2,000 rupees notes. It was so sudden that some people were taken aback, but it is rumored that people in the knowledge of what was going to happen had benefited because they had accumulated or moved away their ill-earned wealth. See. Now they are reintroducing, rather the Reserve Bank of India has started reprinting or printing fresh 2,000 and 1,000 rupee notes.
Yes,
so
the whole...
what was behind it then?
Well, I think the whole exercise seems to me completely pointless. I have a feeling that it was dictated first and foremost by the big banks, the corporate banks, who felt that a cashless economy would be easier to control, easier to get benefits from, and so on. But in a country like India, or which in a way is similar to Bangladesh, poor people, they have cash. They don't have bank accounts.
True. They don't have cards.
No, they don't have cards. And Modi even made a comment saying that even a beggar has a card. So this is real heartlessness. So a lot of people, in fact, there were a lot of deaths. Some 200 to 300 people died.
I think he's pretty aware of the situation because he was the one who talked about providing toilets, isn't it? So if people don't have toilets, they can't have bank accounts.
Well, this is Modi for you. One day it's this, another day it's the opposite, And now he's saying that he's such a great, he cares so much for the people. He's the son of UP where he's campaigning. If he goes to another state, he's the son there, So this is kind of just propaganda, But the BJP, Modi's party, a lot of the leaders had stashed away money. Now he's saying that, they should spend, there should be a limit on how much you spend on a wedding. But at the same time, his own cronies have just had massive weddings,
Well, such restrictions don't work. See, I think I remember back in Pakistan, there was a restriction about how many persons you could invite to a wedding party, and then you could not offer them food. These delicious and sumptuous dinners. See. Then it was, you can only offer a bottle of cold drinks. See. Cold drink was offered, and people were asked to go to a particular restaurant to join the dinner. See.
You can't stop these
people
things,
always find ways to beat the system.
Yeah, you can't, these are cultural issues which need to be worked at a ground level. You can't impose something. Well, look at the dowry, for example. We still have dowries all over South Asia.
Right.
And this has been banned in India from, a very long time, decades.
At least sati doesn't take place.
No, then sati, I don't know if it really did take place to that extent. The British certainly thought it did.
The British were against them. I mean, I've seen so many films, but whether it really existed or not, I do not know.
I think it was a very minor, very small number of people who were involved, and the British blew it up into a big thing. And then actually more people started doing it.
What do you think is the future for people from our community, like South Asian people who have come to this country, settled there, against the background of Brexit, against the background of the resultant racism, and I think inequality that is coming up now in education and in jobs situation. What do you think? What is going to happen within next few years? Things are going to get better, hopefully, or what should be done to make them better?
You see, one thing which has happened in our communities is that there's huge inequalities within the communities, huge class differences. You have one man who's maybe a millionaire, and then you have very poor people as well. And this, I think, is going to increase because with austerity, the policies of austerity, which we call neoliberalism as well, you have galloping inequality, you know. So you're going to have more and more people become impoverished, but a few become extremely rich. And I think unless this whole system is challenged, which in a way I think up to a point, I think Jeremy Corbyn is trying to do that, you know. And it's not easy. But if that can be challenged, the system of austerity, then we can hope that there will be more equality and then people will do better. But what's happened, of course, is that it's also unleashed major racism. And this is a huge, huge problem. I have no answers except that I think people need to organize.
When you mentioned Jeremy Corbyn, is Jeremy Corbyn the answer?
Well, I think, you know, Jeremy Corbyn has had some good policies. I think it's very hard for him to function because he's constantly targeted by his own party and by the media. So, you know, it's no point having ideas if you're not allowed to function.
True.
So that's, you know, I wouldn't say he's the answer, but he certainly gives us something which we should be thinking about.
The Labour Party, going back to Jeremy Corbyn and his party, Labour Party, see, it seems that they have lost touch, or they lost touch with the constituents, the MPs, or they have lost a number of seats in recent elections, and people don't, or is it because the lot more right-wingers out in the field demonstrating and spreading?
I think the Labour Party itself is majorly to blame. I mean, look at Tony Blair. After his shameless launching of the Iraq war on a fake news of a WMD, he's coming back and he's talking big. He's saying you should do this, you should do that, and he's attacking Jeremy Corbyn from and gathering supporters within the Labour Party. Right. You know, so how can people trust a party which is so divided? Even if you look at this Copeland election, which Labour lost,
yeah.
The one of the Jeremy Corbyn supporters was actually going to fight that election, but he was not allowed to. Instead, they got someone who was a Blairite and who completely failed to even campaign. So one has to look at these issues, plus the media. We know what the BBC has been doing in terms of Jeremy Corbyn. It's been made public that they are, doing, completely unethical in their approach to him, and possibly doing things which are not even legal, in terms of attacking him, having all kinds of stories against him. So there is a huge push within the Labour Party to move it to the right. And I think that's been a big problem with the party.
Is there a lack of charismatic leader within the Labour Party?
Well, I don't know. I have never been for charismatic leaders. We had Blair, he was a charismatic leader. Yeah. Look at where he took us, I think we need somebody who can talk to the people, who can go back to the grassroots, who can do that actual work, which the Labour Party hadn't done for a very long time, To be honest, I never had much faith in the Labour Party, It was only when Jeremy Corbyn came in that I thought, okay, maybe there's a chance. But then he's not been given that chance, And before that we had Ed Miliband, and he produced a racist mug about immigrants, you probably remember,
yeah.
So these are the Labour Party leaders we've had, Tony Blair, who brought in the privatization of the NHS started with Blair, So it's a very sad situation.
Well, Amrit, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for being with us, and I hope that you have enjoyed the show as much as we have. Next time, same channel, with another very distinguished guest. Bye for now.